3, 2, 1. Yo, what it is, YouTube? It's your boy Nissy coming back with another bullseye of a tutorial here today on the channel. I wanted to show you guys how to get some of those raw, relatable, soulful, pain vocals, rod wave type of style. You feel me? Mainstream. So let's not waste no time. Let's get to listening to the template right now and let's get to dropping these gems. Let's go.
All we saw, so it's all we know. Had it hard, so it's all we know. Who's to blame when it's all you know? Hard to change when it's all you know. All we know, all I know. All we know, it's all we know. Who's to blame when it's all you know? Hard to change when it's all you know. All you know.
Okay, so you guys got an idea of that. And if you are enjoying this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And also check out the Patreon. If you guys like these videos, all this game that I already gave, guess what? There's even more super saucy, mainstream type of gems that we have on the Patreon. So let's see how close we came to a rod wave. I feel very confident that I came extremely close to rod wave. And this song is a song called All We Know by Rod Wave, one of his older throwback songs. So let's listen to it.
All we saw, so it's all we know. Had it hard, so it's all we know. Who's to blame when it's all you know? Hard to change when it's all you know. All we know, all I know. All we know, it's all we know. Who's to blame when it's all you know? Hard to change when it's all you know. All you know.
Okay, so I love this song from Rod Wave. It was actually like one of the first songs I ever heard from Rod Wave. And today I want to talk about how you can use warmth to make your songs a little bit more relatable. You feel me? And that's the thing about Rod Wave, that pain type of music. If people can't make the connection to it, music in general, if people can't make the connection to it, it doesn't feel like, more than just, oh, this is another song on my Spotify playlist. Usually when people start to connect to a song, it's going to make them play it all the time. That's how you see these songs that have hella plays, because people just keep replaying the song over and over again. I feel like replay value is something that's very important, a situation where we're going to hear it with and without.
All we saw, so it's all we know. Had it hard, so it's all we know. Who's to blame when it's all you know? Hard to change when it's all you know. All we know, all I know. All we know, it's all we know. Who's to blame when it's all you know? Hard to change when it's all you know.
So with these vocals, I was going for a little bit of that warmth. The word I can use to describe specifically this vocal chain is silky, smooth, and warmth, with a lot of kind of like a rich, really rich, silky tone. When you have like a plush, wool, type of thing that you might sleep on or something like that, it just feels really cozy. That's why I was going with Rod Wave's vocals. So the very first thing that I use is something like a CLA 3A, understanding that this is an optical compressor, really gonna help me smooth out Rod Wave's characteristics of his vocal. He has a belting characteristic. So different people who sing, right? Some people sing with their chest, and some people kind of sing with like their belly. Rod Wave, he's a big dude. I feel like he kind of sing with his belly a little bit. So it's kind of sound like he's belting. All we know, kind of like that church type of, throwback type of, it's Sunday and it's the whole gospel type of rap vocal. So that's what I like a lot about Rod Wave's vocal. It's very soulful, but very mainstream and melodic at the same time. So let's look at this with and without. The CLA 3A, I understand that it has transformers in it. Even also, I think the LA2A might have a transformer in it, but for the most part, the LA2A has, tubes kind of driving the circuitry. So when I go for LA2A, I'm going for optical compression that has a little bit of brightness, but with a 3A, I'm going for optical warmth. So understanding the parts inside of it.
All we saw, so it's all we know. Had it hard, so it's all we know. Who's to blame when it's all you know? Hard to change when it's all you know. All we know, all I know.
Some other characteristics that I'm getting for Rod Wave is I'm actually bringing in a little bit of analog noise. Of course, understanding that my RVox, towards the end is kind of keeping that noise out, right? But I'm using the noise so that when his vocal does come through, it feels a little bit fuzzy, a little bit like that plush texture that I was talking about in the very beginning with Rod Waves. I want it to feel like kind of like sheep's wool or something like that, just really fuzzy. That's how I want his vocal to feel, really warm. And all we know, he's talking about all we know. So as an artist, if you're trying to make personal music, all we know, the engineer is responsible for also like literally tonally and texture wise making your vocal feel like all we know. He's not talking about all I know, he's talking about all we know, as in like we a whole group. I'm speaking for more than just myself, and that's what makes a song relatable to somebody like me who I don't even know Rod Wave. So that's important for me, I feel like, with music. So add a little bit of noise to give that little bit of wool type of bed sheet texture, and I use the limiter over a compressor. I feel like the compressor kind of left it too open, but I wanted to squeeze it. I wanted the performance to just be a little bit tight. Oh, we know. I kind of wanted to feel like he's straining. It kind of makes it a little bit more relatable. Oh, we know. Like he's in the church with a Bible and he's squeezing the Bible and he's like, this is all I know. You feel me? He's gripping his hand. So that's why I use the limiter, because the limiter is gripping the signal of the vocal. After that, we have the VEQ, which is actually modeling. I believe it's a Neve EQ. This is Waves emulation. So this is very underrated gem from Waves in the gold bundle. So let's look at this real quick. Just kind of rolling off a little bit of bottom, kind of reshaping the low end of Rod Wave, but then boosting a lot of presence in the high mid as well as a high shelf, kind of giving me a lot of my air, and of course more analog noise.
All we saw, so it's all we know. Had it hard, so it's all we know. Who's to blame when it's all you know? Hard to change when it's all you know. All we know, all I know. All we know, it's all we know.
Really just giving a lot of warmth, and I love using something like the VEQ because the cues and the curves are really different. So sometimes you see I'm using something like high Q, but for the most part, these EQ moves on the default without the high Q are very broad in general. Like the slope of the high cut and everything like that. It's just really just a broad EQ that's really adding a lot of tone. Sometimes I might use the VEQ on my 2-track beat, but not even just like EQing anything, just letting it run through the signal, just so it could give a little bit of juice, a little bit of sauce, a little bit of mayonnaise, salt, and pepper to the material. So after that, we have something like a de-esser, and of course we can pay attention on the VQ. I'm kind of doing like a situation where I'm EQing into the compression, because you kind of see a high shelf right here at 4K that's boosting up into a de-esser that it goes up just a little bit further, around about, I would say roughly 5K. So kind of boosting and cutting in the same ballpark, kind of giving some of that height to Rod Wave's vocal, but still not being harsh. So sometimes you can EQ into a de-esser, so you still have a smooth signal, but it's not too annoying, but it's still airy and it's breathy and it still moves around. You don't want a stagnant high end that just kind of holds like that in place, kind of like it's a nail that's sent into a board. I kind of want my high end to flow around a little bit. So let's look at that.
All we saw, so it's all we know. Had it hard, so it's all we know. Who's to blame when it's all you know? Hard to change when it's all you know. All we know, all I know. All we know, it's all we know.
As well, I was able to get a little bit more aggressive with the de-essing, because I know like the release time for the art de-esser it's kind of program dependent, but because I know the BPM of the song is 75 BPM, I know his S's are a little bit slow. They're not back to back, where other rappers, they might be rapping a little fast. So I was able to get away with even more de-essing. So okay, after that we have something like the C4 pop vocal. We all know what it does, just adding a little bit of hype.
Who's to blame when it's all you know? Hard to change when it's all you know. All we know, all I know. All we know, it's all we know. Who's to blame when it's all you know?
Okay, so yeah, just using a little bit of that multi-band compression. And also, I believe that I adjusted the release time on the mid-range, made it a lot slower, because I wanted to hold down onto the mid-range. I wanted to become a little bit more sturdy for Rod Wave. I didn't want it to pump and breathe, especially because, he's singing and it has a lot more sustain to it. So sometimes if you have a vocal that is a little bit longer, you might have to make sure that your compression release time is a little bit slower, just a little bit slower, because sometimes if the release is too fast, it's pumping and breathing, you're going to start to hear a little bit of a situation where it's kind of like the artifacts will come through. But if the release time is right, then you won't probably hear as much artifacts. It will naturally just kind of clamp down onto the signal, let go, clamp down onto the signal, let go. And you see that in the C4 as it's moving around. So next thing we have after that with rod wave, I'm looking to add a little bit of brightness. So rather than go for an EQ, I went for something like the Fairchild. I understand the Fairchild has tubes inside of it. And like I said in the beginning, understanding the parts, tubes give a little bit of brightness, you know? So at this stage, I said I need a little bit of brightness, but I don't want no EQ. I want a little bit of saturation. Also wanting a little bit of compression on Rob Wave's vocal, just something smooth, like something like a Fairchild is really good for like jazz music or bumping and grooving. You know, when I think about fast and spitty compression, I think of an 1176. When I think of something that's slow, bumping and grooving and vibing, kind of like the beach, the waves at the beach, you know, kind of when it's like low tide at night, just rocking back and forth ever so gracefully. I think it's something like the Fairchild, because I damn well know the Fairchild has a slow release, you know. So with the 6 right here, this is like a program dependent release, so it's kind of reacting to Rod Wave's vocal kind of dynamically, and the tubes are giving me just a little bit of that brightness. So let's bring it with and without.
Had it hard, so it's all we know. Who's to blame when it's all you know? Hard to change when it's all you know. All we know, all I know. All we know, it's all we know. Who's to blame when it's all you know? Hard to change when it's all you know. All you know.
So I got really aggressive with the 670. And for me personally, I liked how that sounded, because at that point in time, look at how slow the release is. It's still not there yet. Get there. The release is still not there yet, bro. That's how slow the release is. So I was trying to really clamp down Rod Wave's vocal, but I damn well know something like the 670, the attack time is like slow as hell. The attack time is so slow, so it's still keeping a lot of those first transients and all that stuff of that impact of Rod Wave's vocal. It's still letting all the consonants come through because the attack is so damn slow. And I'm using the number 6, the dynamic release, to kind of like let it just move around a little bit. But I'm really just clamping down on Rod Wave's vocal at this point. I mean, there wasn't that much compression. There was the de-esser, there was the C4, but at that point, like maybe a dB here, it wasn't that much compression. So that's why I got really heavy-handed, because I wanted the tone and the action of the compressor. I wanted a smooth, soulful vocal, so I went with the compressor that, you know, does that the best and let it have kind of like the most influence. After that, we have a REQ kind of just notching down just a little bit on, you know, like a little achu frequency, like kind of like the Kleenex, the tissue frequency, and Rod Wave's vocal. So there's always going to be a little frequency right here. I try not to duck it down too much, the low mid, because that is also where the heart is. You know, your heart has that low mid frequency, so that's kind of the feeling frequency. So let's listen to the EQ with and without, and of course a little shelf just to give me a little bit of top.
Had it hard, so it's all we know. Who's to blame when it's all you know? Hard to change when it's all you know. All we know, all I know. All we know, it's all we know.
Really kind of just cleaning up, you know, Rod Wave's vocal at that point. Of course, we have the RVox, mostly using it for the gate and adding a little bit of size to Rod Wave's vocal. We kind of already know what this plugin does, so we don't need to really look at it. After that, I had the fresh air. I wasn't too aggressive with my fresh air. I was going for a silky texture with Rod Wave. I mean, at this point, I had already done like the high shelf over here, as well as the high shelf on the, you know, kind of like the REQ. So I didn't use the high shelf on the fresh air, because this high air right here, this is a high shelf, but on saturation and not EQ. So there's the time to use EQ, there's a time to use saturation. But for the most part, I went with the mid air, which is kind of like a bell shape of saturation in the middle. It kind of has like a boosting cut, kind of like clean, you know, kind of like a laundromat, kind of like mop the floor of the, just like the specifically that, like that mid-range, kind of somewhere around the achu frequency, but using saturation. And just pay attention to the mid band. I'm going to bring it in and out and just listen to how it kind of makes way, like valet parking. It kind of makes the way for the vocal to just come through a little bit more.
Had it hard, so it's all we know. Who's to blame when it's all you know? Hard to change when it's all you know. All we know, all I know. All we know, it's all we know. Who's to blame when it's all you know?
So that's what we're using the fresh air for, not being too aggressive. Rod Wave's vocals are nice and mainstream, but still, like how I said, warm, fuzzy, type of like Persian carpet type of feeling I wanted with this vocal, just really warm, cuzzy, and just a good overall warm feeling. That's all we know. You feel me? So after that, we have something like the J37 using the red tape, and I was using it because the red tape has the most brightness out of all of these. So 15 IPS, and of course just doing a little bit of roll off right here on the sub frequencies, because with tape, there's always going to be a little bit of a tape bump, always, 7.5 has a bigger tape bump than 15. 15 is probably the most neutral, and 30 IPS literally almost has no tape bump. There still is going to be a bump, but it's just kind of like minuscule. So let's just look at this really quickly. In and out. It kind of makes the vocal fit into the beat a little more.
Oh, had it hard, so it's all we know. Who's to blame when it's all you know? Hard to change when it's all you know. All we know, all I know. All we know, it's all we know. Who's to blame when it's all you know? Hard to change when it's all you know.
So yeah, that's what I love. The J37, it kind of just like helps the vocal sound a little bit more glued to the beat. Then of course another de-esser, just kind of like that final, just that final like stopgap limiter, for any other S's that might come through with the fresh air. Because when you do the fresh air, you do like the high air boost. Sometimes it might start introducing like a little bit of artifacts somewhere around 8 to 10K. So that's why I just brought in another de-esser to protect myself.
Oh, had it hard, so it's all we know. Who's to blame when it's all you know? Hard to change when it's all you know. All we know, all I know. All we know, it's all we know.
So I kind of got two de-essers kind of working like WWE tag team wrestlers or some shit like that, where one de-esser is kind of doing like the finishing move, and then the other de-esser is going for the pin. You know what I mean? So that's the thing about it. Sometimes when you have two de-essers, it makes it easier for the job rather than one de-esser to take on the challenge all by itself. Then we have the REQ. REQ, just a basic slap back echo delay, nothing special. Then the reverb, I would definitely say I did something here. I had a nice little stock plate going into Abbey Road chambers, and that's what I was thinking about with Rod Wave. That warmth, that church high Sunday morning barbecue type of cookout with the family type of vibes with Rod Wave. You feel me? So then I went for something like the Abbey Road chambers, because when I think of a church, I think of a chamber. I think of something very dark, atmospheric, but also very warm, and that's why I picked the Stone. So for the most part, we were doing a good amount of bass cut, because I don't want it to clog up Rod Wave's vocal with too much reverb. I was pushing the reverb very high. Also, I love this plugin because you have the drive function, and essentially with the drive function, you can start to get a little bit of distortion going into that reverb, kind of help it give a little bit of that fuzziness. I established that I wanted that fuzziness very early on. I kind of already got it from having a little bit of noise on my vocal, but now my effects, that's a great way to mix with the mindset. Before you even start mixing, you already know what texture or what feeling you want. Sometimes before you mix, what you want to do is you want to look up a picture, or you want to look up like an item around your house that you want to make it sound like what that thing feels like, and use that as a guide to be like, does this feel like that? Like, does this feel warm and fuzzy, or what? Does this feel hard and jagged, or whatever type of texture you want out of the vocal? And that's kind of what makes it jump out of the speakers. It feels more tangible. It feels like you can grab it. It feels like if you put your hands on the speaker and the noise coming out of the speaker, you can just touch it and just feel a little bit more of that crispiness, a little bit more of that edge. So even something like reverb, which is not that important, but in this situation like this, it was important for me because I was trying to go for a certain type of style. After that, I lo-fied the reverb, J37 tape, a 7.5 IPS. I'm kind of gluing the reverb to the vocal by using the same plugin with different settings. And yeah, it just kind of made the vocal darker in comparison. Then we have a S1 kind of spreading it out, and the REQ kind of dipping out a little bit of that, that harsh frequency that might, just really start to come through more on the reverb. It started to build up because I had two reverbs that had like extended high end and everything like that. All right, so let's play it with and without.
So it's all we know. Who's to blame when it's all you know? Hard to change when it's all you know. All we know, all I know. All we know, it's all we know. Who's to blame?
Letting a lot of that high end come in actually kind of makes it feel like the vocal got even brighter. So that's what I was trying to say. I was not trying to go for a stupid bright vocal. like a digital sound was going for a warm sound. So I wanted that brightness to sound organic. I wanted to sound like Rod Wave is in a bright room, and that's what's telling you is bright rather than the actual his voice itself being bright. So it's different ways to achieve brightness, the compression, EQ, dynamics, even the reverbs and the delays, like what frequencies you let come through in that bit. After that, we had the Puig Child 670 again on Rod Wave's vocal, different time constant right here. And I drove the tubes even more. I was actually going for a distortion sound, kind of like a parallel distortion. So I think on the original one I had on 14, but I just drove the tube just a little bit harder, Of course, it's a Waves plugin, and there comes a time where it's gonna start to flatten out the signal, but I drove it just a little bit harder so I can get a little bit of that edge and blend that back in.
So it's all we know. Who's to blame when it's all you know? Hard to change when it's all you know. All we know, all I know. All we know, it's all we know. Who's to blame when it's all you know? Hard to
Okay, so that's for the lead vocal. Now, also, let's look at the ad-libs. I really don't know how to sing. It's funny how my subscribers be like, oh, can you do this singing artist? Respect, that just shows me you guys have a lot of faith in me, but I don't really know how to sing. Fortunately enough, I was able to kind of do like a melodic talking type of ad-lib. So for what Rod Wave's ad-libs, what we have here is just kind of like a basics, just a really, really warm, complimentary, it's like a repetition of the lead vocal, but it's in a different pitch. So sometimes that's how you can create variety as a rapper. Maybe you have the ad-lib saying the same thing, but you do it in a different pitch. Now that's kind of giving a little bit of contrast, right? So with Rod Wave's ad-libs, I did the CLAL, the 3A. I used the 3A, of course, just giving a little bit more of that warmth that we like with Rod Wave's vocal. And I feel like for the most part, at this point where I was at with Rod Wave's vocals, I didn't want it to sound like a radio effect of an ad-lib. So I used the 670 Fairchild again, and I drove it even harder. Like I was saying, I damn near tried to go and flatten it with the distortion, you feel me? So that was the way I did it with the ad-libs. Let's look at this with and without real quick.
all we saw, so it's all we know. Had it hard, so it's all we know. Who's to blame when it's all you know? Hard to change when it's all you know. All we know, all I know. All we know, it's all we know. Who's to blame when it's all you know? Hard to change when it's all you know. All you know.
Kind of starts to help the articulation come out. It makes the ad-libs just feel like they've been run through a distortion pedal or something like that. And of course with the CLA 3A, I used another limiter again. I think I was actually starting to beat up these ad-libs a little bit at that point though.
All we saw, so it's all we know. Had it hard, so it's all we know. Who's to blame when it's all you know? Hard to change when it's
So just really aggressive compression, trying to knock off a little bit of that transient, and of course not using any noise this time, kind of giving a little bit of contrast, clean ad-libs, warm and fuzzy, lead vocal, a situation where it's kind of like, okay, a soft, silky bed sheets, you can sleep on that, or you can sleep on a blow-up mattress, which is kind of a little bit of more boingy. So that's kind of how I'm using, there's still beds, both of the vocals are still beds of the, a voice, but, they kind of have different textures to it. That's kind of how I'm creating my separation, but gluing them at the same time. J37 coming back in again, and I'm using the filters on the J37, which is dope too, because you can use it as an EQ. Getting really aggressive with the lows and the highs, using a different tape type, and again 7.5 IPS. And I did a little bit of overbiasing. When you underbias, it will make the sound brighter. When you overbias, it will make it sound darker. So I'm going for clean but not radio effect dark with the ad-libs. All right, so let's look at that.
all we saw, so it's all we know. Had it hard, so it's all we know. Who's to blame when it's all you know? Hard to change when it's all you know. All we know, all
So that's how we use that. Another H delay, this time on 8th note, ping pong, just to make it feel a little bit wider. And like how I said, letting like a full band, something like a full band delay come through kind of gives more the perception of not that radio sound, but just a broad overall band of how the actual, how the actual signal sounds itself, so it kind of gives more perception of brightness. You feel me? That's the thing about Rodway's vocal. I didn't try to make it too bright with the lead, so the ad-libs is kind of helping me bring in more cleanness and bring in more brightness, and that's how I'm doing it, through the way I'm processing the effects, through the way I'm doing the dynamics, the texture. Am I using noise? Am I not using noise? Those little intricacies start to make it really, just feel like a whole world. It starts to make it really feel like you can close your eyes and imagine Rod Wave on that podium telling you this is all he knows, and you realize that's really the only option that he got. And it's just crazy, because I know a lot of people like that in my life too. Like, maybe the streets is the only option that they got, but I'm trying to tell y'all boys though, especially with making music, just take it serious. And music could change your life. I promise you that. As long as you take it serious and you love it, it don't matter if you're rich or broke. Music don't care. If good music is right there in front of you, it don't care if you black, white, Hispanic, female, male, anything in between. It don't give a damn about that shit. Good music gonna touch you if it's good music at the end of the day. So last thing that we have right here, using the J37. I'm using it as a distortion thing, and I'm using it in parallel. I'm pushing the tape so hard. I'm just using it to give a little bit of that crunch, kind of like when you have bread and you toast it on the sides, and now you're gonna eat that sandwich. And you take that first bite. It's not the actual bread itself that might be crunchy, but usually the crust of it. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to bring in a little crust with the J37 tape.
All we saw, so it's all we know. Had it hard, so it's all we know. Who's to blame when it's all you know? Hard to change.
And of course, I'm just using that in parallel just to give a little texture, blending it in. So that's pretty much everything that I got for the video here today. If you guys did like this tutorial, just don't forget, you guys can get this with the beat leveler, a mastering preset, the lead vocal preset, and the ad-libs. You will see it in the link down below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Give me more suggestions for artists if y'all like this video. And oh yeah, don't forget to check out the Patreon where we drop even more gems, all right? Just want to say thanks a lot for being a great part of my YouTube family. Appreciate y'all now. Peace.